Well, I promised you guys I would drop Ultimate Girls Trip as soon as it came out, and I'm keeping my promise. I'm wrecked. I've done 3 shows today, but I am still going. I'm going for you guys. I have my Smurfette retro pajamas on. Eee! I love Smurfette. Don't you love Smurfette? Do you guys know who she is? She might be too... Like, you guys might be too young to know who she is.
They've been so nice to me. I should do something nice for them.
Okay, so I have a little Easter egg I'm going to put in this video. Because we do talk about Alexia Echevarria's current husband, Todd Nepola, on the Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip. In my recap tonight, I'll be talking about him. He comes up. Anyway, at the end of this YouTube video, I am going to put a video that he dropped on his Instagram where he talks about how he needs to apologize to Anthony Lopez. It's in Real Housewives of Miami season 5, and one of these two, I can't remember which episode, where they get in a big fight. And Anthony drags Todd, and Todd gets really angry, and he drags Anthony, and he makes up a thing that Anthony's law firm is like a one-man operation and all this stuff. And that's not true. You know, I did a deep dive on both men. It's in my Real Housewives of Miami playlist, and you'll see the 2 men's pictures in the thumbnail, and you can watch it. It's a deep dive on them. Anyway, Todd oddly took to Instagram to do this long apology video, which made me wonder if Anthony didn't threaten to sue him. It's possible that Todd Nepola wanted to do some business with Anthony Lopez because Anthony owns real estate, and maybe he wanted to do something with him about real estate. And this was preventing that from happening because he dragged him. So he said, I'll make you a public apology. I'm speculating. I don't know why he did this, but he did. But in it, okay, the first part's like blah, 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 you'll see. But the second part is so much tea. So much tea. He basically talks about how the Peacock producers were agitating him and making him upset, and they weren't really being supportive of him and Alexia, and it was like a disaster. And essentially, he tells the whole story, but it's like really produced Real Housewives of Miami way more than Real Housewives of Beverly Hills was, at least when I was on the show from 1 to 3. So, I mean, maybe now they go further, but wow, I was shocked, okay? This is not my experience. But I do believe he's telling the truth in his apology. He spills so much behind the scenes tea. I think he's going to get in trouble, but I'm still going to show it. Shady. I bring it up because Dave Portnoy had commented that he was next to the Real Housewives of Miami when they were shooting, you know, for one of the Hamptons or something. He had rented the house next door, and he was like, couldn't get over how, you know, they were basically telling the women what to do. And he was like, wow, it's really almost scripted, right? Which I found shocking. Anyway, that led to a bunch of rumors saying that Peacock shows are like very overproduced, not like Bravo, where it's kind of like improv, right? So why did I bring this up? I just thought you'd find it interesting because I've heard the same thing about Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip. And there were a few scenes tonight that felt exactly like that. Like they told the women, come in a line and dance and let's see you do this thing. And it was just really like, huh. So anyway, I don't know if that bothers you or you love it, but I definitely wanted to share it with you guys, right? Yeah. Because if they're producing the shows different, we need to know because we need to judge them different. Now we should judge the producers. Like if we're like, this is a lame scene, we're like, yeah, you suck. Fire that producer. Forget the housewife. Fire the producer. Anyway, watch that video at the end. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. So I was getting flashbacks tonight because you remember that my son was raised by a Thai nanny. So we would just hear all the time, kap on kap, sawadee ka. And, you know, my son spoke Thai and it was just so, it just made me miss her. I miss you, Miss Sue. I miss you. My son even went to the Buddhist temple every week with Miss Sue so he could experience what that was like, and the monks loved him. Oh my gosh, I wonder if I could find a picture. Not on tonight's video, I'm too tired, but I'll see if I can find a picture of him in his proper Thai garb. It's awesome. So Pepsi starts waking everybody up in the morning and the house comes alive with cop on cop, Sawani cop. Candace is crying a lot on this show, and she does this thing where she dabs her eyes before the teardrops, and it's over and over again. And they do make fun of it in the show tonight, which I thought was so funny. Portia does like the greatest imitation of Candace, like that, you know, dabbing her eyes before she cries. But anyway, they start out the show with Candace saying, "We deserve Emmys because this is like a soap opera exactly, but without anyone writing lines, and it's way harder." And then they do like a pretend montage of all the women, you know, with their names, and like it was a soap opera. And the name of the soap opera was Days of Our Wives. It was like artsy like this. Or maybe it would be like, you know, Vogue would be like this. "I'm so beautiful. I'm so hot. So hot." Anyway, whatever the hell it was silly. All right, so so what happens next? Heather and Whitney have decided that the relationship may be irreparable. I mean, Heather just knows that Whitney is secretly coming for her no matter what she says or does. And to be honest, we're kind of like, wow, are we still letting these women be the storyline of the show? This plot is so boring. Like, we've seen it on Salt Lake season 3, and we're now seeing it on this show. And I'm just like, wow. I mean, one episode, sure, even that was like a stretch for me. But this is now we're on day 4, and we're still watching this as a daily part of the show. Portia decides that her day is going to be all about massages and games because it rains, and that's all the producers could come up with. So what they ended up doing is they start by getting a massage, and of course Thai massages, as I mentioned earlier, are very strong and almost painful. And they're very touchy-feely, like they're always touching you. It's really annoying. I mentioned this, and it's funny because they made fun of it, because obviously they must have experienced it while they were there. So they're getting a massage. Some women have their clothes on, some women don't. They feel like the women are kind of going near their private parts. Of course, Giselle complains that one of the women was touching her inappropriately. So the other women are kind of enjoying it, but it seems painful. It's kind of cringe. The whole scene's weird, and Andy has them making like sex noises and does like a montage. And Giselle's making the weirdest noises, like a bird. She's like, caw-caw, caw-caw. And everyone's like, why are you... This is like her massage noises. And then she had another noise she was doing. I forgot to mention that on the previous show. It's like, oh, 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 oh. I don't know. It was so weird. I was like, what is she doing? Maybe she's cuckoo. So before they get into the games, they have a little break, and Whitney decides to call Lisa Barlow, of course, from the trip, because who else is she going to call from Thailand with a 24-hour difference? But Lisa Barlow. Lisa gets on the phone and, you know, basically says that Heather is a liar and you're trying to expose her, and that's why she's getting difficult with you. And she pretends to be like a really good friend to Whitney. Whitney, I'm sure, was going to, you know, use this as ammunition in some way. We don't see it in the edit in today's episode, but maybe that was the plan. Either way, they show the whole conversation. And basically trying to make Whitney look like she's not, you know, harping on something, Heather's really a liar, you know, kind of thing. So then Whitney at some point during this like period does a confessional, and she says that she felt this kind of blind loyalty to Heather Gay because Heather Gay got her on the show. And so she didn't want to turn on her friend that got her on the show because she was grateful. And so she just blindly followed Heather, but then she realized that she couldn't just be Heather's mop. And, you know, she had to make her own way in the world, and that might mean turning on Heather, and it may mean turning on other people, but she had to be like her own person or it wasn't going to work. And Heather resented that. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell she meant by being her mop. Like, what? Huh? like, what? She cleans up her mess. She's the cleaning lady. She's a tool Heather uses. I was, yeah. This was a real Bravo show by now. We would already have a meme with Heather holding a mop, for sure. I don't know if KFC is sponsoring the Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip, but they've asked for it like 4 times, which is so strange in Thailand to be asking for that. But I must admit, nothing better with a hangover and a bucket of fried chicken, baby. It's finger licking good. Then Candace gets emotional out of the blue because she says that although Giselle stood up for her when Portia brought up on the chat room some gossip surrounding Candace, that basically she was suing someone for a down payment on her mother's house, that Giselle, although she stood up for her, as I mentioned, didn't ask her for a comment and asked the other woman who gave the defamatory gossip to Portia for a comment. So she felt like, boy, you didn't even have my back to call me and get a comment. So she's crying. Giselle's like, I stood up for you. What do you want? And then, you know, Candace starts talking about her journalist degree that she has and how proper journalism is done. And Marisol chimes in with a brilliant comment. And she's like, this isn't NBC News. This is like a gossip show. And then Giselle seems to take offense. Okay, so here's something that irritated me. Whoever does the edits of the show, they always choose the same women to do the confessionals. And I know some of the women are going to be super catchy with the one-liners and super funny, and that's great. But once in a while, you want to hear from someone, whether they're catchy or not, what they're thinking or feeling, because it fills in a blank or it gives you some insight into them. And what's so annoying is they use the same like 3 people in this show for some reason over and over and over again. And I'm like, give somebody else a turn, producer. You know, like, I get it. The one-liners are good, but like, I want to hear from Whitney, or I want to hear from some of the people they're not using that often, just to see their side of things. All right, so then Portia comes out and she names the team Poor Leah after Portia and Leah, but obviously it's a play on the fact that Leah always plays the victim, or at least that's the way Portia sees it. And so they go out and they start playing a volleyball-ish game. There's a name for it. I didn't write it down. But they have to play this game in elephant suits. So they look like they're riding elephants while they play the game. I mean, it just was really... It basically said to me, at this point in the show, the producers are panicking. That's what I'm getting on day 4. The cast aren't upset. The producers are upset. They are panicking, because they're rehashing old fights that they should know the audience wouldn't be that interested in. And now they've got the women dressing up in elephant costumes to try to entertain us doing a game. Like, somebody needed to call that. This is not on brand, okay? Bunch of women in elephant costumes playing a Thai game is not on brand for our franchise. It's like... what's happening over there at Peacock? I mean, in my sleep, I could have come up with a better idea than that. Seriously. And they do pad thai noodle eating competition. And Candace wins, and everyone says it's because she has the biggest mouth. Ha ha, hardy har. Anyway, that happens. Whatever. And then they do spoo it or chew it. And this was a good game. Now, this game was on brand, was a good game. Kudos to the producer that saved the day with this game. Basically, they had to answer a question truthfully or eat a scorpion. And that was really fun to watch. And the questions were good. What came out of it? Well, Alexia's best husband in bed was Todd. Second best was the father of her children, or the cocaine cowboy. And the third was Herman. No big surprise with that list, right? And then we've got, they Heather. Bring up the damn black eye again. I swear they bring it up again. Heather's like, I'll eat a scorpion. I'm not going to tell you this goddamn story again. Anyway, because she was supposed to say the truth, like, who really hit you in the eye, and she ate the scorpion. She ate the scorpion because nobody hit her in the eye. How many times does she have to say it? Jeez, I said it in the last one I did of this, remember? This is crazy. I mean, since Whitney's bringing up all this dishonesty around Heather, they ask her to say 3 lies that Heather told on the Salt Lake City, and Whitney refuses to do it. It's her good friend, and she eats the scorpion or whatever to show her loyalty to Heather. But Heather does a confessional, which was bang on. She's like, you've already called me a liar. You've already played that card, and it didn't work the way you wanted it to work. So now you're trying this strategy, right? Like the good friend strategy. And she's like, either you're my enemy or you're my friend, or you're a good friend. Pick a lane. They ask Marisol, who do you trust the least out of this group? And Marisol's like, Leah, because Leah's thrown me under the bus like 2 times and no one else is really talking to me at all. So might as well be Leah. And that's the truth. No one's really interacting with Marisol except Leah. She should be like, I love Leah because without her and a little tiff I'm having with Alexia, my stomach hurting from withdrawals, I'm not really doing anything here. I think they asked Candace who she'd like to bang, and she said Giselle. I don't remember the other ones. Maybe they didn't show every single person. I can't remember, but those were the ones that I did write down. Then everybody's got only 45 minutes to get ready to do the night activity, which is going to be Giselle's New Orleans night, a shout out to her heritage, her family, where she's from. And then they do some really cool flashbacks where they show her with her dad, and he's talking about the history of the plantation that they go visit. Marisol, by the way, is dragging Pepsi because he didn't send the servants or whatever to clean her room quick enough, so she's upset. Alexia doesn't like that kind of pretentious behavior, so she's sort of scolding Marisol, and we're finally seeing a real fight begin, which is so exciting because so far it's all been old stuff. So we're like, yes, let's see some new dynamics happening. And I'm so happy to see Marisol now stepping up her game to, like, I know uncomfortably so, but to like fight with Alexia or take on like maybe not such a PC funny girl persona, like let us hate you a little bit, you know? They sit down at dinner and literally 5 minutes later it starts to pour rain, so we don't really get to enjoy the New Orleans themed dinner. Then we see Giselle dancing with the women down a hallway that was very produced to a New Orleans style parade type vibe. They get to this room. It's all decorated with New Orleans styled stuff, like almost a reception area. And they're all sitting in the middle of it. It's kind of awkward, actually. It was very strange the way they did it. Maybe the producers had to throw it together really quickly because they didn't expect it to rain. But they end up having a game, Reasonable and Shady, that Giselle has played on The Real Housewives of Potomac before with Robin Dixon. It's named after her podcast. Anyway, she plays this game on Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip with these women. And boom, out of the gate, we're back in Mormon country. And Heather and Whitney are going for each other on the Mormon stuff. And all the women actually are sick of it too now. So it's not just us. It's like the women on the trip are like, enough already. This just isn't that important. Like your religion, and I get it. You think this is everything, but like it just isn't enough to make up an entire series of programming. So let's drop it already. And I was like the same. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, they can't be putting this in. Like, not again. Anyway, the game is sort of a bust. Like, it doesn't, some of the questions, you know, are meant to drag people for what they've done on the trip so far, their weaknesses or whatever. But they're voting on it, and the voting doesn't really make sense, like shady, reasonable, and it didn't work. To me, this was like a flop, this game. It didn't get any tea out of anyone. It didn't really start any fights. It didn't really make a lot of sense. I think some of the women didn't even know how to vote because they were like, it's kind of both. If you did it, it was reasonable, but it was also shady. So like no one knew how to vote. It was so silly. Fired, producer. Anyway, fired. It was so lame, I'm not even going to go through it because you'll sleep. You will be like this. And just when you think nothing could get worse with tonight's show, it does. Leah decides to make the conversation on the shuttle bus home about anal and who likes anal sex. And Candace says, I did it once with a small guy and it hurt. Heather says, I've never done it in my life, but we all kind of know she has. No, just kidding. Yeah, maybe I'm not kidding. And Whitney doesn't respond. So we know what her answer is. And Leah, you know, she gets to ask the question and we know she likes it or she wouldn't ask. That's how it goes. So, but I was just like, do we really need to end with this? I mean, maybe start with it. Don't end the show with it. It's 9 o'clock. I don't want to be thinking about that before bed. Then Whitney goes in the confessional room and she kind of gives this vibe. I know this is kind of the Raquel filter from Vanderpump Rules, but we're going with it for this because she like sneaks into the confessional video and she's like, her big confessional moment. She's like, I'm going to throw my friend and cousin under the bus and I'm going to tell you her 3 lies on Salt Lake City that I didn't tell you earlier because I was, you know, trying to be a good friend or whatever. We're supposed to get some deep meaning from it. But anyway, she says, number 1, Heather and Lisa were friends. Oh, no. I mean, of course they were. They were casted together, but not for long. 2, it was that Heather hasn't really left the Mormon church, I guess, because she's still in the database. And the 3rd one was that she does know how she got her black eye. And I'm like, duh, she's already said it on the show. This is like the 5th time. It didn't have the impact it needed to. I mean, what kind of crappy lies are those? I needed something way more, like Heather's sleeping with Lisa Barlow's husband. Now we're talking, okay? Yeah, what else could we get? Heather is running an MLM scam and plans on taking, who do I knock out? Mary Cosby's money. Or Heather's secretly the puppeteer of Mary's church. Heather's screwing Mary's grandpa. What else could Heather be doing? Heather's Botox that she puts in people's faces is really, you know, acid. I mean, something, but not what she gave us, right? That's just not, don't bother. Like, don't do that. I mean, make it up, actually. Most people do on the shows now. Just make it up. She's like, Heather doesn't live in Salt Lake City. Shh. And now the Easter egg you guys have all been waiting for. Todd Nepola apologizing to Nicole Martin's husband. And all the tea about the way they produce the show on Real Housewives of Miami for Peacock shows, which we can use in the future. Enjoy. And good night. Good morning and good afternoon. And like, subscribe, and hit the notification button.
Please accept my sincere apologies for wrongly mentioning your company on TV in a derogatory way. Not only did I have no right to mention your firm, I had no knowledge about the company. It was just a stupid and uncalled for comment. TV got the ugly out of me and I'm really sorry. I hope this won't create any tension for us going forward. Now, with no sarcasm, only a little bit of humor, I'm going to send you this card and some flowers and the good stuff, Godiva chocolates, asking you to accept my apology. In life, we do a lot of stupid things, and we have to apologize for that. In this particular case, I made a public statement on TV, which means I need to make a public apology, which is why I'm using social media to apologize to Anthony's entire team at his law firm. You know, the truth is, the way that scene went down, it was never in my wildest dreams going to play out that way. It seemed like just a spur of the moment thing. And truthfully, 5 minutes later, Anthony and I were fine. We were having some drinks together. And in fact, a couple of months later, he and I talked and we discussed the possibility of me even managing some of his shopping centers that he owns. I truly thought we were fine. But after seeing the scene play out on TV, I would understand if he feels he's owed an apology, which he's right. He is owed an apology. And so is everyone who works for him and all the vendors affiliated with him. I was wrong. You know, I would like to blame it on editing and saying editing got the best of me, but the truth is I'm a little embarrassed by my behavior, you know. It's not quite what everyone sees, but what goes on behind the scenes. So in order for you to understand where my apology comes from, I want to just give you the backstory real quick so you maybe could sympathize a little for someone in my position. See, we all know there was a lawyer's luncheon at my house and it played out the way it did, and Nicole pulled out an Amex card and she stuck it to the lawyer and said, here, take this, and that escalated into some huge commotion. From there, when I came home that night, people and the powers that be of the show were getting in my ear, telling me about this horrible situation, how it went down, and there was a card thrown and blah, blah, blah. And they're telling me how I could let this happen, and this happened in my house. So they're getting in my ear, and that's toxic, and that's bad. And I wasn't there, and I wasn't present, so should have stayed out of it. So fast forward from there about 2 days or so, 3 days, and we're gonna have our meal at the Gringo dinner, which was supposed to be fun. And on the car ride down to the Gringo dinner in Miami traffic for over an hour, I'm listening to my wife argue with the producer, and she's adamant she does not want to address this situation with Nicole at the dinner because the dinner's supposed to be the 4 couples getting together and having fun. In a compromise, she agrees that she'll discuss it with Nicole prior to the dinner starting, just the 2 of them, because she doesn't want any interruption in the dinner. Well, as you obviously well know, my wife lost out on that argument, and it was a lot of arguing, but she lost out on that argument, and the dinner was going to be, that situation was going to be brought up, and it was going to be discussed, and we weren't going to avoid it. So not only did I have to leave work early and have to listen to this stuff for 2 or 3 days, I have to be in a car, in traffic, watching my wife argue with the producer about what's going to happen, and this is going to go down. My blood pressure was boiling. I own it. I was getting triggered already. Now, when you arrive to these events, as many people have seen these shows know, it's not like everyone just gets there and goes to dinner. When you arrive and you get to the scene, you wait in your car and they bring you out one by one. They got to mic you up and tell you how it's going to work. And as this is going on, I'm being told by the producer that, you need to stick up for your wife if this gets heated, because if you don't, there's been other men who haven't stood up for their wives on these shows, and America's destroyed these guys for not standing up for their wives. So now my blood pressure is going even higher. So you go inside the restaurant, you sit down, not as a group, pretty much one at a time. They sit you down, they give you your assigned seating, and there's cameras in front of you all over the place, one right in front of your face. There's microphones, there's lights, and then they brought Anthony and Nicole in last. Now, I'm assuming they did that so we wouldn't discuss anything with them prior, but whatever the case may be, you make a little small talk, you have a drink, everything is going okay, and then it's time out. We're not here for the small talk. That's not what the Real Housewives is about. It's about this. We're going to discuss this situation. Now, what people don't know is, they probably do know, but they don't see, is that this scene took place over 10 or 15 minutes of this back and forth and back and forth. And the whole time I am getting irritated when people say I have bad energy in the scene. Of course I do. I don't want to be there. I wish to God Anthony wasn't saying anything because I'm feeling the pressure. Now I have to say something. Then I'm trying to get out of my seat, saying maybe I could just get up and walk away, but I'm cornered in, which was probably strategically put there. So I'm stuck. And behind Anthony, 5 feet behind him, I have that same producer who my wife was arguing with, holding up his phone, and what he says on the phone to me in writing is, "Aren't you going to protect your wife? Stand up for your wife." And then he wipes that off and he writes, "Your friend." And you know what? I snapped. I lost my cool, and it was uncalled for, and I shouldn't have done it. So yeah, it's built up, and I'm wrong, and I'm apologizing for that. So I don't really want to blame the producer. That's his job. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to get me triggered. He's supposed to get people triggered, and it worked. So it's just a little bit more than what you see. But here I am having to make a public apology and send a grown-ass man flowers and chocolates. Hopefully he finds it funny. I think he wasn't so bothered by it, but I do recognize that I badmouth his firm. What I didn't do is badmouth Anthony's success. I am very well aware of Anthony's story, how he comes from humble beginnings. He put himself through law school, and we all know from watching the show, he's extremely successful financially. We've seen his stuff, and we know he's doing very well. I never wanted to imply that. I certainly wasn't trying to create drama. But what I don't want, now that filming is about to start again, for there to be some Todd versus Anthony drama on the show. It wasn't there. It doesn't need to be there. I don't want to participate. If you know me, you probably know I'm not really a huge fan of being part of this reality TV stuff. It's a major burden on someone's lifestyle and time, and I really don't want to get dragged into it. So hopefully, by me coming out publicly, and I'll even tag some of the Housewives sites so this goes a little bit more viral so the apology is heard, it squashes it. I do know that Anthony was unbothered at the time. Certainly when he saw it play out, I'm sure he was surprised as I was, and I'm sure he feels that I do owe an apology to his firm. And I wanted to do this for weeks, that's the truth. But again, the powers that be of a show that you work for, which I don't work for, but my family works for, makes it very clear. You can't say anything until the show's airing is done, which is the last reunion, which was last week. I've been holding this inside now for, 5-6 weeks since I've seen my ugly behavior on TV, and I can't do anything about it. And that really hurts because when you do something you feel terrible about and it sticks to you, it's stuck. So this apology is probably just as much for me to release it and let it out as it is to the people that I may have offended. I'm sure they hardly even think about it, and that's the beauty of it, that it was forgotten by them pretty quickly. But what they do need to know is I am really sorry, and I will not do something like that again. What else could I say? I feel bad, and I hopefully think that, you know, with this coming out there, and people will say that you probably should have just let it go and maybe not done anything, and they might be right. But for me, for feeling good about myself, I have to do this. I mean, I know the producers would have loved for me to do this on the TV show and done it, but the problem with that is, then one, I don't know when he was going to get the apology. By the time you film it and it gets to everybody, it could be 9-10 months later. Two, if it's not relevant to the show, they don't show it, so it wouldn't have ever gotten out there. And three, I don't know how they would edit it. And let me tell you, if you think Photoshop and Facetune makes a difference in the way a person looks, you have no idea what editing could do to you. I do know how and what it could do to you now. So again, I'm not blaming anyone but myself. I embarrassed myself. And for all of you who stood behind me and told me how great it was and how amazing and powerful I am, I know you have good intentions. You want to make me feel good, but I know it wasn't good. I know it wasn't a pretty look, and I know I was out of line. So I truly do appreciate your support. That means a lot to me. But for this apology, this is what makes me feel better. So again, I don't know, Anthony, to your entire firm, I never knew anything about your firm when I said anything about it. I was only talking shit because I was agitated. I never should have done that. My apologies to you, your firm, your vendors, and everybody you work with. And again, I'm sending you the good stuff, the Godiva chocolates and flowers. I wish you all a great day. And again, my sincere apologies.